Okay, so let's discuss further about directory structures. And I hope so this will be the last theoretical video, and after that we will start working on some coding stuff and learning some tricks, learning something about the Laravel framework. Although we are learning about the Laravel framework, but as of now I believe like we are going theoretical rather than being practical. And then from the next video, and I'm pretty sure like from the next video we will definitely be going to be practical with the Laravel framework. Okay, so let's bear with me and stick to this video, uh, because these are the things that really matters to know the basics before diving deep into the Laravel framework. All right, so previously we had talked about up till the configuration file here. Then let's take a look at the database here. So inside the database, we have factories, we have migrations, and we have seeders. All right, so let's talk about the migrations first. So what are migrations in normal PHP working environment? What we do is basically we go to the PHP myadmin, and then we create the tables, we create the columns and stuff like that, and we do so much stuff manually. Whereas in the Laravel, we create migrations, and with the help of migrations, we can create tables, we can create foreign keys, we can create relationships, we can add more columns to the existing tables, and so much and so more we can have with the migrations. So let me open a migration file for you. So take a look at here. This migration file contains the anonymous class, and then it extends with the migration, and we have two methods here. The one is up and the second is down. So first take a look at what up function does. So it creates a schema of the users. So basically it creates a table of the users, and then it sets the table and sets the primary key to the ID, and then the string to be the name, string to be the email. And you can see that there is a unique function extended to this string, which means like this column should be unique. And then we have the timestamps, and that could be nullable. We can also do the nullable stuff here as well. Then we have strings again. We have remember token. So remember token means like if you are logging in and you set the checkbox to remember, then Laravel automatically sets the remember token, and then when you automatically come back maybe sometime, then you will still be logged into the system. And then we have the timestamps. So in Laravel application we create timestamps. So the timestamps create two columns. The one is created at, and like which means like at what time this record was created, and then the second was the updated at. So at what time that specific record is updated. All right, and there are a bunch of other more things that we can do with the migrations. Lots of other methods available with the table object here. We will obviously take a look at deeper when we will cover the practical scenarios here. All right, so what does this down method? So this down method checks if like this user table exists, and if you want to override or revert your migration, then you can go with the down method, and this down method will obviously drop the table of the users. All right, so this is basically the function of migrations here. Then we have seeders. So seeders are basically kind of like seeding your database, maybe with fake data. All right, so obviously whenever we create application, we try to run it, we inject the data manually, whereas on the other hand we can inject or seed the data with the help of seeders in our application or in our database. All right, and then the factories come here as well. So with the help of factories we can create fake. We use the faker here. So faker is basically a library, third-party library which Laravel uses, and then with the help of library we can create name, email, string, characters, paragraphs, and stuff like that, so much and so more. You can obviously check the faker on the internet, and this will take you to the GitHub repository, and it contains a lot of functions there. So this is basically a functionality of these two, fakers and factories. Next we have public here. So inside this public folder we store all our assets. By assets I mean like we store our application images, CSS files, JS files, and every other thing that our project requires. We store all those things inside the public. So this should be publicly available. Alright, then we have the resources. So inside the resources, we have CSS folder here, we have JS folder here, and we have views here. Alright, so let's talk about the views first. So like whenever you try to load a view, the view should be stored somewhere in our application. So this view folder is basically used for storing the views. And you can see like we have the welcome.blade.php. Why is that? What is the purpose of blade here? In normal PHP languages, in frameworks or applications, what we do is basically we create the file like welcome.php. But why blade here? So blade is basically a template engine used by the Laravel, and with the help of this blade templating engine, what we can do is basically instead of casual PHP which starts and closes with the PHP tags, we can use these two curly braces. Alright, that is the power of blade. So this is basically a very basic example. There are a lot of other things we can achieve with the help of blade. Obviously we will see those stuff later on, but the blade itself is the templating engine of the Laravel, provided by the Laravel. Alright, so this contains all the views files, and down here you can also see that we are echoing out this PHP version with these two curly brackets. Alright, what are these CSS and JS files? So if you are going to work on the front end without blade and you want to use some kind of JavaScript, obviously the Vue.js, the most common with the Laravel. So these app.js files and app.css files comes in play when you try to use the front end libraries or front end frameworks inside the Laravel application. We are not going deep into that as of now because we are dealing with the Laravel. We are not covering any front end part, any front end language or library. Then we have the routes here. So inside the routes, obviously I have discussed previously in some previous videos, like we store all our routes inside this web.php for the HTTP. For the APIs, we store in the api.php, and then we can also store the console and the channels here. Then we have the storage. So storage is really important in Laravel. So storage means like in the framework you can see like we have some couple of other folders inside the framework folder. So what it does is basically inside the storage we store the log files we create. Sometimes we also store our public files, or sometimes we also upload the files instead of directly going into the public directory, which is up top here. Let me show you this one. So what we want, as in our few minutes back, what I explained is like we should store everything in this public directory, but there are two preferable ways. One is like to store all the uploaded files. Now the uploaded files means is like whatever file that is coming from the front end or maybe from the user that is being uploaded from with the help of form, we store that inside the storage directory. And then if we store that inside the storage directory, what we need to do is basically we need to create a link which points out to the public directory, and with that we will be able to access those files. If you don't create a link and we store the files from front end, maybe the user avatars or stuff like that, and then we don't create a link and store them directly in the storage, those files will not be available on the front end. So what my approach is basically I try to always store the files inside the public directory. All right, but obviously we can also store in the storage, and we can also change the path. So the default path is set to storage. We can also change that path to the public as well. Let me show you how we can do that. All right, so inside the config we have file systems.php. Okay, so this default is set to local, and then we have the disk drivers here. So now you can see that this is set to the app here, the local is set to app, and then this public is basically set to storage. All right, so this root path will go to obviously the public. Here we can also change this to go to the storage path as well. All right, so right now this is going obviously directly to the public here. but obviously we can change that to the storage as well, and that obviously totally depends upon how we are going to configure. Then we also have the S3 bucket here, so we can also store the files directly to the S3, which is basically the AWS provided service. All right, moving back where we were, so we were at this storage path here. So I have explained you. Now this logs contains all the log files of the application. By logging, what I mean is basically like if there is any error occurred, so all those logs will be stored inside this logs directory. All right, then we have the tests here. So test is basically like we have two kind of tests, the feature test or the unit test, and with the help of tests we can create tests in order to test the functionality or the specific part of our application. All right, the last folder is basically the vendor folder. So this vendor folder contains all our third-party tools or libraries or applications that the Laravel requires, or maybe later on we want to implement or bring those libraries in our application to make the application work. For example, let's say if you want to generate the PDFs, you don't have any direct method to create PDFs, so obviously you will use third-party libraries like mpdf, dompdf, tcpdf and stuff like that. There are a lot of PDF libraries available, so you can install them and they will automatically come to this vendor folder. All right, so that's about it for the directory structures. Let's take a look at one more file here, which is basically the composer.json. So this composer.json file contains all the basically dependency injections or the dependencies that the Laravel project requires. So for example, as I previously said, like if you want to bring the third-party library into this system, so that library will also be stored here as well. For example, as I mentioned, like if you want to create or generate a PDF, so for example you install the mpdf library. So mpdf will be saved in this vendor folder, but there will be a link created to this similarly kind of this. Then what will be the basically functionality of this is like when you give this project to someone else, and what they need to do is basically they can just run the composer update or composer install command, and automatically all the dependencies that we have injected in our system will automatically be installed onto their PCs or onto their servers as well. So you don't need to basically give this vendor folder to your employee or to any third person whom you want to work on this on any specific project. All right, so with that said, we have covered our directory structures, and let me show you one thing. Like so far we haven't seen like where is our Laravel framework on the front end. So let me show you like how we can run the application in order to see the Laravel framework, how it is displaying its view, this web.blade.php file, where is this being displayed. All right, so in order to run the Laravel application, we need to type in a command called php artisan serve. All right, so this will run the server for us, and when we click on the URL that will be generated by this Laravel application, we will be able to see our application up and running in the browser. All right, so the URL is generated. If I click on that, this will open the browser for me, and you will see the Laravel welcome.blade.php view file there. All right, there you go. Now you can see that we have the Laravel framework successfully installed and up and running. So this is basically the web.blade.php file, which is basically displaying here. So if I go to that and if I change everything, for example just remove everything and reload it, you will see nothing. All right, so if I bring it back, save it and then reload the page, now it is back. All right, so we have learned like the directory structures and how to run the Laravel application. So that's about it, and I will see you in the next episodes.